A cold wind moves over the open grassland, bending it like waves beneath a gray ice age sky. The horizon is far and empty, broken only by the shapes of distant animals drifting in and out of the mist, titanic silhouettes with curved tusks and steaming breath. Their low calls vibrate through the air like thunder held inside the earth. A group of humans stands at the edge of this endless world, their bodies wrapped in animal hide, their eyes locked onto the herd before them. They have tracked these creatures for days. Their feet are bruised, their hands frozen, their stomachs hollow enough to ache against their ribs. Hunger is no stranger to them, yet on this day, the ache feels heavier, sharper, because winter is closing in, and if they go home empty, the children waiting back at camp may not live to see spring. The hunters carry spears, long, sharpened, fire-hardened shafts once believed to be the greatest weapon human hands could make. But the prey before them today are colossal beasts, wrapped in thick hide and muscle. A wounded mammoth does not fall quietly. It charges. It crushes. It kills. Humans know this better than any animal alive. They have seen their brothers trampled beneath hooves and tusks, bones splintering like dry wood, skulls slammed into frozen dirt. And yet, they return to hunt again, because fear and death are familiar companions. For a moment, silence stretches between hunter and prey, long enough to taste the tension in the air. The humans crouch behind a rise in the earth, each breath controlled, each heartbeat trying not to betray their presence. They are close enough to smell the musk of the animals, close enough to feel the vibration of their footsteps traveling through the ground. They need to close the distance more before they throw, close enough to burn lungs, close enough to call death with their own hands. But distance is danger. A hunter must move near enough to strike without being seen, and that balance walks like a blade over the throat. Across the world at this time, every human understood the same truth: a spear thrown by the bare strength of an arm could travel only so far, and only with so much force. A single mistake, a single missed throw, could leave a hunter exposed and helpless. These animals were not prey that feared humans, they were prey that tolerated them because humans were not yet terrifying enough. Nature had not yet learned to fear the human mind. But on this day, on a day like this, something different happens. Something new enters the world. One hunter rises, but instead of lifting his spear to throw it with bare hands, he raises a strange piece of carved wood, longer than his forearm, shaped in a gentle curve, decorated with red ochre spirals. The spear rests inside a socket at one end. The other end fits perfectly into the hollow of his palm. This object looks simple, yet it is utterly unfamiliar, as if he is holding a shadow of the weapon to come rather than the weapon itself. The other hunters look at him with a mix of curiosity and quiet belief. This tool has been tested in secret. It has been practiced when others slept. Now it will decide the fate of the people who trusted him enough to follow. He stands. Slowly. The mammoths shift and snort, sensing movement. Steam pours from their trunks, rising like ghosts. The hunter draws his arm back, not high above his shoulder like a normal throw, but low and controlled, like drawing a bow that does not yet exist. For the briefest moment time seems to hesitate, waiting to see what will happen. Then muscle tenses. The arm snaps forward. And the spear does not move the way spears have always moved. It explodes. Not loud like thunder. Loud in distance. Loud in speed. Loud in force. It tears through the cold air, leaving a trail the human eye barely follows. Where a normal spear might arc gently and fall far short, this one streaks across the open world like a knife thrown by the gods. It flies farther than any hunter thought possible, powered by leverage rather than muscle alone. The herd reacts too late. The weapon slams into flesh. A deep sound, thick, wet, final, echoes back across the plain. The mammoth bellows in pain, staggered by a kind of impact humanity has never produced before. Not from ambush. Not from cliffs. Not from traps. From distance. From safety. From thought. This moment, invisible to the future, is one of the most important in human history. In that instant, the world changes forever, even if no one there understands why. A roar erupts from the hunters, not of victory, not yet, but of realization. Their eyes widen like children seeing fire for the first time. Something impossible has happened. The spear did not simply strike the animal, it struck with more strength than any arm alone could ever deliver. It entered deep, deeper than expected, finding organs beyond reachable depth. The mammoth shudders, confused by a threat it never evolved to defend against. The hunters throw again, now desperate to repeat the miracle they just witnessed. Again, projectiles scream through the air. Some strike hide, some miss, some break against bone and frozen earth. But each throw carries new strength. New reach. New promise. The hunters roar like living fire, their hearts wilder than they have ever been. And the mammoth herd breaks. Panic rips through them. Their weight shakes the earth as they stampede away. The injured one lags behind, weakened, bleeding from wound after wound until its colossal body finally collapses to its knees. The hunters approach slowly at first, weapons raised, preparing for a last charge. But the beast is done. Its eyes roll toward the sky, steam drifting from its mouth. Blood melts the snow around it. The world grows silent again, silent except for the deep breaths of men who know what they have accomplished. They lay hands on the mammoth, not with arrogance but reverence. This creature will feed every member of their people. Its bones will become tools, its hide will become shelter, its tusks will become decoration, ritual object, identity. Yet the victory is not the kill alone. The real victory is invisible, hidden inside the tool that made this moment possible. Something older than agriculture, older than metal, older than writing, has just entered the human world. A new kind of power. A new kind of future. It is not just about survival anymore, it is about control over distance. For the first time, humans can kill without risking being killed in return. They can strike from beyond the reach of claws and hooves and teeth. They can become something more than prey pretending to be predator. Back at camp that night, fires crackle beneath a dark sky. Children listen with wide eyes. Elders feel something they cannot name. The hunters demonstrate the new tool, letting others feel its weight, its balance, its strange ability to turn a weak throw into a powerful one. In their hands, the spear thrower feels alive, as if energy waits quietly inside the wood. They pass it around, whispering to each other, imagining a future full of prey they once feared. Before this moment, humanity threw spears for hundreds of thousands of years with bare hands. Generations upon generations believed they had reached the limits of their bodies. But on this night, as meat sizzles and fat drips into the fire, as steam rises from the feast they earned, something far greater than a meal exists here. They realize the body was never the limit. The mind was. The arm may tire. The shoulder may weaken. But imagination has no boundary. With every throw of this new invention, humans step further away from the animals they once were and closer to the species they will become. No one in that camp understands physics. No one uses the word leverage. They do not know that the length of the tool multiplies speed, or that kinetic energy grows almost unbelievably fast with every added meter per second. They only know the feeling in their chests when the spear flew, the sudden truth that nature is no longer symmetrical. For the first time, humans have reached beyond the body. They have built a machine. Tomorrow, they will return to hunt again. They will test the tool, improve it, modify it, pass it to youths with stubborn hands and eager spirits. Soon, entire families will migrate with piles of these devices strapped to sleds and carried in bags. Word will spread between groups through stories around shared fires. A new way of killing exists. A new chance to live as winter deepens. The world has not yet named this object. It has no label, no identity beyond what the hands that hold it understand. But tens of thousands of years later, we will call it the Atlatl, the first true ranged weapon in human history, the ancestor of the bow, the father of artillery, the quiet spark that ignited the age of long-distance killing. That spark begins here, on this quiet frozen plain, beneath a sky full of stars that will never know what changed beneath them. And as the hunters sleep beside their victory, as embers fade and wind howls across the grass, humanity unknowingly stands at the edge of a doorway. One step through it, and the entire course of our species turns. The Atlatl will shape culture, war, migration, art, imagination, and destiny. From this moment forward, the world belongs to distance. The world belongs to ideas. The world belongs to human hands that refuse to accept the limits written into flesh and bone. The first ranged weapon has entered the story of our species, and nothing will ever be the same. The world in which these first humans lived was vast, untamed, and astonishingly beautiful, yet perilous beyond comprehension. Endless plains rolled toward jagged mountains in the distance, their peaks capped with ice that glimmered like silver under the faint sun. Rivers cut through the land, dark and fast, reflecting the sky in their moving mirror. Forests stretched endlessly, a patchwork of shadow and sunlight, hiding dangers as well as nourishment. Every step in this landscape was a negotiation with life and death, for the world itself seemed alive with both promise and threat. It was a place where a hunter could find both food and fatality in the same heartbeat. The climate was merciless, cold enough to freeze exposed skin, yet mercifully varied in pockets where warmth allowed plants, animals, and humans to survive. The seasons dictated existence with ruthless clarity, winter demanded endurance, summer offered abundance, and spring and autumn were fleeting, fragile transitions where timing meant survival. The animals of this era were unlike any we know today. Gigantic creatures roamed the earth, each adapted to the rigors of survival and climate. Woolly mammoths trudged across frozen plains, their shaggy coats brushing against frost-covered shrubs. Massive elk with towering antlers moved in herds, the sound of their hooves a low rumble across the tundra. Saber-toothed cats lurked among trees, shadows of predatory elegance waiting for the careless or unlucky. And there were smaller creatures as well, hares, birds, and fish, but each was part of an ecosystem that was lethal in its complexity. For humans, understanding this living world was not academic, it was existential. To misread the movement of a herd or the signs of a predator was often fatal. The environment was not merely a backdrop for life, it was a participant, an adversary, and a teacher. Humans themselves were already remarkable, yet still fragile in this wild world. They walked upright, their hands free for tools, their brains capable of abstraction and foresight. But in a landscape filled with beasts that could crush bone in a single blow, these traits were not guarantees of survival. Their senses were finely tuned, eyes scanned for movement, ears picked up the faintest sounds, and noses detected scents invisible to modern humans. Even their bodies bore the marks of necessity, strong muscles for endurance, reflexes honed by repeated exposure to danger, and skin conditioned to cold and heat alike. They were predators, yet always prey, existing in a delicate balance of power and vulnerability. Every step they took required calculation, instinct, and courage. The landscape itself demanded ingenuity. Shelter was critical. Humans learned to read the land, seeking caves or rock overhangs for protection against snow and wind. Fires were carefully tended, not just for warmth but to cook food, ward off predators, and gather the community together. Clothing was made from hides and furs, stitched and molded to fit, not simply for modesty but for survival against frost and biting winds. Every artifact, from stone blades to simple digging sticks, represented countless hours of experimentation and observation. Life in this environment rewarded creativity as much as strength, and humans were beginning to discover that the mind could extend the body's reach, turning weakness into power. Movement across this world was constant. Humans were nomadic, following the migration patterns of animals, chasing the seasons, and avoiding areas where ice or drought made survival impossible. They had to read the sky, the clouds, the wind, and the behavior of animals to know when to move and when to stay. Every migration was a gamble, every path a story of trial, error, and adaptation. And yet, despite the dangers, there was awe in these journeys. The beauty of a snow-covered plain under the first light of dawn, the reflection of stars on a frozen river, the sudden appearance of a herd of elk like ghosts drifting across the horizon, these moments of wonder were as vital as food and fire. They reminded humans that life, while precarious, was also breathtaking. Survival hinged on observation. Hunters learned to read subtle signs, a broken branch signaling passage of an animal, footprints in mud or snow, the distant flicker of a bird startled into flight. Every sense became a tool, every instinct sharpened to perfection. But observation alone was not enough. Humans had to anticipate, to imagine the unseen, to plan several steps ahead of their quarry. This was the beginning of strategy, a cognitive leap that distinguished humans from other predators. The landscape was not merely a series of obstacles, it was a puzzle to be solved, a challenge to be met with both patience and daring. The human diet reflected the harsh realities of the environment. Plants were gathered cautiously, selected for nutrition and availability, while animals provided meat, fat, and bone for tools. Hunting required teamwork and intelligence. To take down a mammoth or a bison was never an individual endeavor, it demanded coordination, timing, and understanding of both the animal's behavior and the terrain. The hunt was a dance of life and death, a negotiation where mistakes were often unforgiving. Success was celebrated, failure mourned, and knowledge passed carefully from one generation to the next. The balance of food scarcity and abundance shaped social structures, alliances, and even the rituals that would later define early human culture. Weather shaped not only survival but perception. Storms could isolate entire groups, frostbite could claim the unwary, and summer drought could reduce rivers to trickles, forcing humans to adapt or relocate. Yet, weather also offered guidance. Clouds hinted at approaching blizzards, wind direction revealed animal pathways, and changes in temperature signaled shifts in season. Humans learned to read these patterns not through scientific abstraction but through intimate interaction, learning to trust experience over speculation. Their survival was embedded in understanding the subtle rhythms of the earth, a dialogue with nature that required humility and respect. Communication, both spoken and nonverbal, became essential. Humans shared knowledge about where food could be found, which animals were dangerous, and how to craft tools or construct shelters. Early languages and gestures were not just convenience, they were lifelines. They allowed for cooperation in hunts, transmission of stories, and the reinforcement of social bonds. Humans were social creatures in a time when social cohesion could mean the difference between life and death. Trust, empathy, and shared experience were as valuable as sharp teeth or strong arms. In this world, every human carried the weight of both possibility and peril. Their senses, their skills, and their minds were constantly tested. Yet it was also a world of profound inspiration. Rivers glinting in the morning sun, the haunting call of a distant predator, the sight of a mountain rising like a sentinel, all these shaped not only survival strategies but imagination itself. The landscape was a classroom, a stage, and a mirror reflecting the potential within humans to think beyond instinct. It demanded courage, rewarded innovation, and instilled wonder. By understanding this world, one begins to understand why humans sought ways to extend their reach beyond mere physical strength. They were facing animals that could outrun, overpower, and outlast them. The environment offered resources, yes, but only if humans learned to read its language, anticipate its movements, and manipulate its elements to their advantage. Every tool, every strategy, every lesson from survival carved into stone or bone was a testament to the adaptability and intelligence of a species learning to rise above its limitations. It is in this context, amid vast plains, dense forests, towering mountains, and the shadow of creatures larger and stronger than themselves, that humans began to conceive the idea of reaching further, of striking from a distance. The world was harsh, unforgiving, and yet full of lessons and possibilities. It was a place that demanded creativity, courage, and cooperation. And it was in the heart of this ancient, awe-inspiring wilderness that humans first began to imagine weapons that would carry their intentions beyond the limits of their arms, tools that would change the course of survival forever. The world was both teacher and adversary, full of danger and wonder. And within it, humanity was learning the delicate art of balance, how to respect life while asserting dominion over it, how to coexist with an unforgiving environment while bending it ever so slightly to their will. This was the canvas on which the first innovations in hunting would be painted, a time when survival and imagination intertwined so closely that the boundary between the practical and the visionary blurred into a single, compelling necessity. It was in this place, in this era, that humans began to understand not just how to live, but how to transform their environment, how to extend their reach, and how to imagine futures that lay far beyond the limits of flesh and bone. The land itself seemed to whisper possibilities, and the first humans learned to listen. Their survival depended on it, their stories were shaped by it, and their destiny, though unimaginable at the time, was quietly, inexorably beginning. For countless generations, humans had relied on the spear as the quintessential weapon of survival. It was simple, elegant in its design, and devastating in skilled hands. A sharpened stick, sometimes hardened in fire, sometimes tipped with stone, could be thrown, thrust, or used to ward off predators. In the hands of a practiced hunter, it could take down a deer, an elk, or even wound a larger beast enough to allow a group to finish the kill. Yet, for all its effectiveness, the spear had limits that were becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. The limitations were not merely physical but existential. Distance was the most immediate problem. A human arm, no matter how strong, could only throw a spear so far. To hunt large, dangerous animals, woolly mammoths, giant bison, cave bears, the hunter had to come close enough to risk life and limb. One misstep, one misjudged trajectory, and a predator could turn a hunt into a funeral. Hunters understood that proximity to prey was a constant negotiation with mortality. Even when the spear found its mark, the force it delivered was finite, constrained by muscle and fatigue. A large animal might shrug off a hit, driven by adrenaline or sheer bulk, leaving hunters exposed and vulnerable. Accuracy was another cruel constraint. The farther the target, the more variables entered the equation: wind, terrain, movement of the prey, and the limitations of human perception. Hitting a moving animal at 20 paces was difficult, at 40 paces, nearly impossible. This meant that hunters had to rely not only on strength but on instinct and experience, attempting to predict behavior, reading the subtlest signals of motion. Every failure increased risk, and repeated failures could decimate a group's food supply, leaving them weak, hungry, and more vulnerable to both predator and environment. Hunting as a communal activity helped mitigate these limitations, but not entirely. Teams of hunters would work together to herd animals toward cliffs, traps, or ambushes. Such strategies were ingenious, yet they required coordination, timing, and an almost uncanny understanding of animal behavior. Even with perfect teamwork, there remained the raw danger of confronting creatures vastly stronger and faster than the humans themselves. The physical limitations of the spear placed a ceiling on what humans could achieve. Survival demanded not just skill, but a new form of ingenuity, a way to extend reach, power, and precision without exposing the body to mortal risk. This problem extended beyond the hunt. Food scarcity was not merely inconvenient, it was existential. A failed hunt could mean days or weeks of hunger. In harsh climates, this could be lethal. Human communities were small, mobile, and vulnerable. A single unsuccessful hunt had cascading consequences, affecting children, the elderly, and those already weakened by age or injury. Survival depended on efficiency and reliability, on finding ways to take down prey without unnecessary loss. The spear, formidable as it was, could no longer guarantee that efficiency. The very act of throwing a spear was exhausting over time. Muscle fatigue limited the number of throws a hunter could make before needing rest. The arm's strength could only deliver so many blows at maximum force, and each exertion carried cumulative risk. Fatigued muscles increased the chance of misfire, of the spear glancing harmlessly off hide or bone, of leaving a hunter dangerously exposed. The human body was remarkable, resilient, and adaptable, yet even it had boundaries that could not be ignored. Survival demanded a solution that went beyond mere brute strength. This growing awareness of limitation sparked ingenuity. Humans began to experiment, subtly at first, with ways to increase the force of their throws. Observations of leverage, of swinging motions, of the effect of a lengthened arm or a weighted shaft were made without words, without diagrams, purely through trial and error. One hunter might notice that a spear thrown with a stick held behind it traveled farther. Another might try sharpening the shaft differently or balancing it in a particular way. These small experiments hinted at the realization that power could be amplified without enlarging the human body, that ingenuity could extend reach and multiply effect. The psychological weight of limitation was heavy. Hunters were intimately aware of their own vulnerability, their exposure to forces they could not control. Watching a giant beast strike, hearing the thundering hooves of a stampede, feeling the raw power of nature pressing down, it left an impression deeper than fear, embedding a sense of urgency into human thought. This urgency was a catalyst for invention. The mind began to imagine ways to cheat nature, to bend circumstances in favor of survival, to create an advantage without requiring a superhuman body. In this sense, the limitations of the spear were not merely practical, they were profoundly transformative, pushing humans toward conceptual leaps that would define their future. The constraints of traditional hunting also fostered social and cultural consequences. Knowledge of techniques had to be passed carefully from one generation to the next. Observation alone was insufficient. Children learned by imitation, by trial, and by the repeated failure and success of elders. Stories and rituals often revolved around hunts, emphasizing the lessons learned, the mistakes to avoid, and the consequences of overestimating one's strength. Each community developed collective wisdom, a shared understanding of what was possible and what was too dangerous. The spear defined not only physical capability but also cultural practice, shaping the rules, behaviors, and hierarchies within the group. Yet these very limitations planted the seeds of imagination. The human brain, capable of foresight and abstraction, began to visualize solutions to problems it could not yet fully articulate. What if a spear could travel farther without more effort? What if a weapon could strike with the force of a muscle multiplied by something external? These questions were not idle, they were survival imperatives, existential urgencies encoded in thought, waiting for a tangible expression. Every failed hunt, every close call, every narrow escape nudged humans toward innovation. The physical reality of the spear's limitations became a mirror reflecting the need for intellectual and technological evolution. As communities observed the behaviors of prey, patterns emerged that further emphasized the need for innovation. Animals had strategies, too. Herds would scatter at first sign of danger, predators would coordinate ambushes, and even large creatures could defend themselves effectively against groups of hunters armed only with spears. Humans began to understand that to succeed, they needed not only skill and courage but a method to overcome distance, a way to hit targets before being reached, to act at a range where they were relatively safe. The spear, once a symbol of human mastery, had become a reminder of human vulnerability. This tension between capability and limitation created fertile ground for creativity. Humans were not passive observers of nature, they were active participants in its ongoing drama. Every failure demanded reflection, every risk required consideration. This pressure forged the conditions in which something remarkable could emerge, a tool that would change the dynamics of survival, that would redefine what it meant to be a hunter. The spear, in its enduring simplicity, had done its job for centuries. But now, its limitations were a call to transcendence, a push toward a mechanism that could extend human strength, speed, and precision far beyond the reach of the arm. It was in this crucible of necessity, danger, and observation that early humans first began to conceive of mechanical advantage. Leverage, energy transfer, trajectory control, these were principles not yet named but intuitively understood. The human mind began to see beyond the body's limitations, to imagine a weapon that could throw farther, strike harder, and allow survival without risking life unnecessarily. The seed of the first true ranged weapon was planted in these harsh, unforgiving landscapes, where every day demanded ingenuity, and where the consequences of failure were immediate and severe. The story of the spear, in this context, is not one of failure but of preparation. Its constraints were a teacher, a mirror showing what humans could not yet do, and, in doing so, suggesting what they must invent to endure. Without the spear's limits, the Atlatl, and later the bow, might never have existed. The struggle against the boundaries of flesh and muscle was the first step toward mastery over the environment, a step that would carry humanity across continents and through millennia. Every throw that fell short, every hunt that went wrong, every encounter with a creature too powerful to strike from a distance, became part of a collective memory. This memory, shared and passed down, became the intellectual landscape from which invention would arise. Humans learned that survival was not only about strength or courage but about ingenuity, foresight, and the ability to act beyond the immediate reach of the body. The spear's limitations were not setbacks, they were the catalysts for human evolution in thought and technology, a force compelling humans to imagine, to experiment, and to create solutions that would shape the future of the species. It was within this tension, between what humans could do and what they could imagine doing, that the story of invention quietly began. The spear remained indispensable, yet inadequate, a constant reminder that distance, power, and survival were intertwined in ways humans were only beginning to understand. The first steps toward a weapon that would transcend the limits of the arm, a tool capable of striking far beyond immediate reach, were born of necessity, curiosity, and the relentless drive to survive against the enormous, indifferent power of nature. There is a question that has haunted humans for as long as we have been capable of thought, though it has rarely been spoken aloud in words. It lives instead in the quiet moments, in the tension before a hunt, in the reflection by the fire, in the awe that strikes when looking at the world and wondering what place we occupy within it. What does it mean to create something that has never existed before? What does it mean to take what the body alone cannot achieve and give it life through thought, through vision, through invention? This question is older than recorded history, older than the first marks on a cave wall, older than language itself, because it arises from the very essence of being human. Animals may adapt and innovate in instinctual ways, but humans alone possess the capacity to imagine, to see possibilities beyond the immediate, to construct tools not just from need but from foresight and imagination. The act of invention is in many ways an intimate conversation with limitation. To invent is to recognize that the world, as it stands, is not enough. The hunter who realizes the spear cannot reach far enough, the gatherer who dreams of a tool to crack shells without risking a finger, the thinker who wonders if a fire could be controlled rather than merely tended, these are all moments in which human consciousness confronts its own inadequacy. There is tension here, a friction between what is and what could be, and it is in this tension that the mind stretches, experiments, and finally transforms. Invention is born in the space between survival and imagination, where necessity presses against possibility. Consider the landscape in which early humans lived: vast plains, dense forests, jagged mountains, and frigid ice fields. Every day, survival was a negotiation with reality. Every hunt, every gathering trip, every night spent beside a flickering fire was an exercise in understanding cause and effect, in measuring risk, in anticipating outcomes. Yet, despite the ever-present threat of hunger, injury, or death, humans did not merely react to their environment, they imagined alternatives. They conceived of tools that could reach farther, strike harder, or provide protection. They began to see not only what was, but what could be, and to experiment with bringing the imagined into reality. The mind, already capable of abstract thought, began to extend the body's reach. This extension of human capability is not merely mechanical, it is profoundly psychological. To envision a tool that exceeds the limitations of the arm, that converts thought into action over distance, is to exercise faith in one's own cognition. It is an assertion that imagination can surpass instinct, that vision can overcome immediate danger, that foresight can reshape the present. In these quiet cognitive leaps, humans discovered a fundamental truth: survival is not guaranteed by strength alone, but by creativity, by the willingness to act on a vision, and by the courage to experiment with the unknown. This realization may have been subtle at first, but it carried a weight that would shape the trajectory of our species for tens of thousands of years. The emotional landscape of invention is equally profound. There is fear in experimenting, for mistakes can be costly. There is awe, for the first time a design works as intended, and wonder at the possibilities that emerge. There is humility, as early humans recognized that their bodies were limited, and that the tools they could imagine might grant them power they did not naturally possess. And there is hope, the quiet, persistent hope that one small act of creation could tip the balance between life and death. Every innovation is therefore both a practical solution and a deeply human act of psychological transcendence, a bridge from instinct to intellect, from necessity to aspiration. Imagination, in this context, is inseparable from observation. Humans had to watch, to study, and to understand the patterns of prey, the movement of the seasons, and the rhythms of the land. They had to understand leverage before they could exploit it, trajectory before they could master it, materials before they could transform them into tools. Observation without imagination yields survival, but imagination without observation is fantasy. The power comes when the two converge, when the mind sees a possibility grounded in reality and dares to manifest it. This synthesis of understanding and vision is what makes invention a profoundly human act, one that shapes culture, technology, and destiny alike. In the act of hunting, the need for such vision becomes painfully clear. A human armed only with muscle can kill, but only within a limited range. The animals hunted are often larger, stronger, and faster. Approaching them is perilous, relying on stealth, strategy, and coordination. Every failure risks injury or death. The recognition of these limitations, of the body's finite reach, of the unpredictability of prey, creates a psychological imperative to find a better way. And when the mind conceives of a tool that can extend reach, amplify force, or deliver precision from a distance, it is as though the hunter has glimpsed the future and seized it. There is also a philosophical dimension to this realization. To invent is to assert agency in a world that often feels indifferent or hostile. To create a tool that bends nature to human will is to claim not dominance in arrogance, but participation in a deeper dialogue with the environment. Humans begin to see themselves as actors capable of shaping reality, not merely reacting to it. This awareness transforms the hunter's relationship to the world, from one of vulnerability to one of cautious empowerment. Every spear, every sharpened stone, every tool that carries intention beyond the limits of flesh becomes a statement of identity, a declaration that humans can shape the world in accordance with their foresight and ingenuity. Innovation is also a communal act. The first successful experiment is rarely an individual triumph in isolation. Knowledge is shared, techniques are passed down, and practices are refined across generations. Observation, trial, and imitation become the cultural fabric upon which invention is sewn. In this way, the act of creation is intertwined with social cohesion. A single human mind may conceive a new tool, but the survival of the group depends on teaching, learning, and cooperation. The mind that innovates, therefore, also shapes the structure of community, embedding foresight, experimentation, and reflection into the very culture of early humans. Time, too, assumes a new quality in the act of invention. Immediate survival is no longer the only horizon. Humans begin to project themselves forward, imagining consequences minutes, hours, or even seasons away. The hunter does not simply throw a spear, he imagines the spear's path, the reaction of the prey, the next movement of the herd. The thinker does not merely fashion a tool, she conceives its potential applications, anticipates its limitations, and refines it across repeated trials. The invention of tools transforms time itself into something elastic, a medium through which foresight and imagination operate. Humans learn not only to act but to plan, to anticipate, and to shape outcomes in ways previously reserved for instinctive predators or natural forces. The act of creating also carries an aesthetic, almost spiritual weight. Even the earliest tools are rarely devoid of thoughtfulness in form. A carved handle, a balanced shaft, a polished edge, these are not merely functional, they represent attention, intention, and care. The act of shaping materials into something that extends human capability is also an act of shaping the world into an expression of human perception, a form of dialogue between mind, hand, and environment. This aesthetic dimension reinforces the profound humanity of invention, blending practical need with psychological and even artistic insight. Ultimately, the question of invention is inseparable from the question of human identity. What does it mean to be human if not to imagine, to create, to transform the world in ways that the body alone cannot achieve? The first leaps of technological imagination, tools that extended reach, that multiplied force, that transformed survival, were not just innovations, they were assertions of existence. They were declarations that humans were not merely part of the natural order, subject to its whims, but participants in a dialogue with the world, capable of shaping both environment and destiny. Every step taken toward invention carries echoes that ripple across time. When a hunter first experiments with leverage, when a thinker imagines reaching farther than the arm allows, when a group collectively shares knowledge of a new method or tool, humanity edges closer to a profound realization that the mind can shape reality in ways that instinct and brute force cannot. This realization is not immediate, not always conscious, yet it becomes a defining trait of our species. It is what allows humans to survive in harsh landscapes, to build societies, to imagine futures beyond the immediate horizon. In these reflections, the first sparks of human ingenuity are revealed. The tension between limitation and possibility, between observation and imagination, between survival and aspiration, forms the bedrock of human thought. It is within this space that tools like the spear thrower, and eventually the bow, will emerge. These inventions are not merely mechanical, they are philosophical, psychological, and cultural milestones. They embody the human capacity to dream beyond necessity, to act beyond instinct, and to create beyond immediate survival. The act of invention is therefore both intimate and universal. It is a solitary moment of insight and a shared cultural experience. It is a practical response to a harsh environment and a philosophical assertion of human possibility. It is fear and hope, trial and triumph, observation and imagination entwined. From these early moments, humans begin to understand a truth that will carry them through millennia: the limits of the body are not the limits of the mind, and the tools we create are extensions not only of our hands but of our vision, our courage, and our capacity to imagine what has never been before. The object in the hunter's hand is simple at first glance, a curved piece of wood with a notch at one end and a smooth grip at the other, but its simplicity is deceptive. It is a bridge between human thought and the unforgiving world of survival, a tool that transforms the limitations of flesh into the power of invention. The spear it carries, once restrained by the human arm, now becomes something else entirely. When thrust forward, it launches with a speed and precision impossible to achieve by muscle alone. The hunter feels the difference immediately: the balance, the leverage, the strange sensation of force amplified. Every fiber of his body reacts to the motion differently, guided by intuition, refined by practice, yet freed from the natural constraints of raw strength. For the first time, the human body and the human mind work together in a new symphony, where thought enhances action and imagination becomes reality. The weapon is not only practical, it is elegant. The curve of the wooden shaft is deliberate, shaped to fit comfortably in the hand while allowing the spear to be held securely in the notch. The surface is smoothed, sometimes polished with stone or bone, sometimes decorated with patterns of ochre, not merely for ornamentation but to signify identity, skill, and care. Each Atlatl carries the mark of its maker. The length of the tool multiplies the speed of the thrown spear, using the principle of leverage to transfer more kinetic energy into the projectile than muscle alone could provide. The hunter does not calculate this consciously. The understanding is embedded in the motion, learned through repeated trials and subtle adjustments over time. This combination of observation, experimentation, and practice is what allows the Atlatl to surpass the spear as humanity's first true ranged weapon. What it achieves is extraordinary. Whereas a hand-thrown spear can only travel so far, limited by the strength and stamina of the thrower, the Atlatl transforms that limitation. A spear that once faltered at 20 or 30 feet now soars much farther, striking targets well beyond the reach of claws, tusks, or horns. Not only does it extend distance, but it also amplifies force, turning a simple wooden shaft into a weapon capable of penetrating thick hide, bone, and muscle. This innovation changes the very dynamics of the hunt. Humans no longer need to close the distance to risk life and limb. They can strike from relative safety, altering the balance between predator and prey, risk and reward, survival and death. In one throw, the rules of engagement have been rewritten, and humanity gains an advantage it has never known before. The Atlatl is also versatile. While primarily a throwing device, it can be used in close quarters to guide the spear with precision, to adjust the angle of release, and to manipulate trajectory in ways impossible with a hand-thrown weapon. The hunter experiments, learning how slight changes in grip, angle, or force affect the flight path. Each variation represents a lesson in physics learned without words, a mastery born from experience, intuition, and relentless observation. The tool embodies the intersection of body, mind, and environment, allowing humans to transform their understanding into tangible, lethal efficiency. It is not just a weapon, it is a testament to the capacity of the human mind to envision solutions that exceed the limitations of natural ability. The cultural significance of the Atlatl is profound. It is not merely an instrument of survival, it is a symbol of ingenuity and mastery. A decorated or carefully carved Atlatl may indicate the skill of its maker, the status of its wielder, or the collective knowledge of a group. In the hands of a community, it becomes an object around which stories, rituals, and shared learning revolve. Hunters pass their knowledge down to the young, teaching them the subtle motions, the feel of balance, the nuances of force and distance. In this way, the Atlatl becomes a vehicle for intergenerational knowledge, a physical embodiment of human learning, memory, and creativity. Its use is both practical and ceremonial, entwined with survival, identity, and the very fabric of early human culture. The physics of the Atlatl are remarkable, even if the hunter cannot name them. The lever amplifies velocity, transforming the rotational energy of the throw into linear speed. Kinetic energy, once constrained by the limits of human muscle, is magnified, allowing the spear to pierce, to travel, and to strike with power disproportionate to the effort applied. The design is deceptively simple, yet it demonstrates an intuitive understanding of mechanics that would not be formally described for tens of thousands of years. Every throw is a negotiation with forces invisible to the eye but intimately felt by the body, torque, momentum, and the smooth arc of motion. The hunter who masters these forces commands not only the spear but the very laws of nature, bending them, however subtly, to human will. Its impact on the hunt is transformative. Large animals, once nearly untouchable without intricate traps or close confrontation, become manageable. Hunters can engage from a distance, coordinating attacks that maximize safety and efficiency. Herding strategies change, ambushes are more precise, and survival rates improve. The Atlatl does not merely make hunting easier, it redefines the possibilities of human subsistence. Groups can secure larger game, distribute resources more efficiently, and increase their chances of thriving through harsh seasons. In practical terms, it becomes a cornerstone of survival. In existential terms, it reshapes the human relationship to the natural world. But the Atlatl is more than an extension of muscle, it is an extension of thought. Each successful throw reinforces the connection between mind and hand, between observation and action. The hunter learns to anticipate the flight of the spear, the reaction of the prey, and the behavior of the environment. This predictive awareness, cultivated through experience, becomes part of the hunter's cognition. In a sense, the Atlatl teaches humans to think not only in the present but in trajectories, consequences, and probabilities. It is the first tool to fully integrate intellect with action, bridging the gap between what humans can do and what they can imagine doing. The invention also sparks imagination beyond the immediate act of hunting. The principles behind the Atlatl, leverage, energy transfer, and distance, lay the groundwork for further innovation. Humans begin to see that tools can extend ability, that mechanical advantage can transform survival, and that abstract principles can be applied to multiple contexts. The Atlatl is, therefore, not only a solution to a pressing problem but a catalyst for cognitive evolution. It demonstrates that the mind can conceive what the body alone cannot achieve, that foresight and ingenuity can become literal instruments of survival, and that creation itself is a path to empowerment. In the broader story of humanity, the Atlatl represents a pivotal moment. It is the first true ranged weapon, the predecessor of the bow, and an ancestor of technologies that will one day allow humans to project force across unimaginable distances. It is the point where observation, necessity, and imagination converge, creating a tool that not only solves a practical problem but transforms the way humans interact with the world. In the hands of a hunter, it is both extension and revelation, power and philosophy, survival and possibility. It is, in every sense, a first step into a new era of human mastery over environment and circumstance. As the sun dips below the horizon and the hunters return with their prey, the Atlatl is carried not only as a tool but as a symbol of potential realized. Its presence marks a shift in the relationship between humans and their world, from one of brute endurance to one of thoughtful action. It embodies the realization that the body is not the limit of capability, that invention can surpass instinct, and that the mind can shape reality in ways previously unimaginable. In this quiet, transformative moment, the hunter does more than secure food, he glimpses the vast horizon of human possibility, the power of imagination made real, and the future of a species learning to extend itself beyond the bounds of its own flesh. With every subsequent use, with every lesson passed to the next generation, the Atlatl becomes more than a weapon. It becomes a teacher, a repository of knowledge, and a tangible testament to the creative capacity of humans. It embodies the delicate dance between necessity and ingenuity, between observation and experimentation, and between survival and foresight. This simple piece of carved wood, held in the hand and swung with care, carries within it the first echoes of a human understanding that will one day build civilizations, traverse continents, and redefine what it means to wield power. It is in this moment, amidst frozen plains, shadowed forests, and the breathless anticipation of the hunt, that the first true ranged weapon claims its place in history. It is no longer merely a stick or a spear, it is a bridge between mind and matter, between possibility and reality. It is a revolution in wood and stone, muscle and thought, survival and ingenuity, and with it, humanity steps into a new chapter, where distance, precision, and intellect begin to shape the destiny of a species capable of imagining the impossible and bringing it into being. The earliest traces of what would become humanity's first true ranged weapon are shrouded in mystery, hidden beneath layers of time, soil, and decay. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of carved bone, notched wooden sticks, and carefully shaped stones, but the picture remains incomplete. In many cases, the materials themselves have vanished, consumed by rot, water, or the relentless passage of millennia. What survives are tantalizing hints, grooves in bone suggesting rotational movement, faint impressions in clay or soil, and tools whose purpose is not immediately obvious. Each fragment carries a story, but one that is incomplete, leaving modern observers to reconstruct meaning from shadows of the past. The Atlatl, in its earliest incarnations, was a creation both powerful and ephemeral, a tool whose presence was often more felt in the impact it created than in the evidence it left behind. These first devices were not uniform. They emerged in different regions, crafted from the materials at hand, shaped by the knowledge and imagination of their makers. In some cases, the weapon was simple and purely functional, a straight piece of wood, smoothed and notched to hold a spear. In others, the objects are elaborate, carved from antler or bone, decorated with incised lines, and polished with care. Even when the purpose of these early forms is uncertain, there is evidence of intentional design. The grooves, curves, and proportions suggest a sophisticated understanding of leverage and motion, a tacit knowledge passed through trial, observation, and shared experience. These were tools born of necessity, yes, but also of thoughtfulness, a testament to the human mind reaching beyond immediate survival. The archaeological record, however, is fragmentary. Organic materials decay, leaving gaps that cannot be filled. Wooden shafts rot within centuries, leaving behind only impressions in soil. Leather bindings disintegrate. The precise methods used by prehistoric humans to attach spears, balance weight, or refine leverage are often lost to time. Archaeologists reconstruct function from shape and wear patterns, interpreting grooves, nicks, and polish as evidence of repeated motion. But uncertainty remains. Was this curved piece of bone a toy, a ceremonial object, or a practical hunting tool? The evidence is tantalizing yet incomplete, inviting both awe and frustration. In the silence of lost materials, one can almost hear the heartbeat of early human ingenuity, pulsing faintly through the remnants of what has survived. The ambiguity of these artifacts is part of their intrigue. Every discovery is a puzzle, and each piece carries the possibility of rewriting what we know about early human innovation. Some of the earliest examples, dating back tens of thousands of years, suggest that humans were experimenting with ways to extend force and reach long before the bow was conceived. Yet, without direct evidence, it is impossible to trace a continuous lineage. Instead, we glimpse a pattern, humans repeatedly and independently attempting to solve the same problem, converging on a solution that uses leverage to transform a spear into a projectile capable of traveling farther and striking harder. The lack of complete objects adds a layer of mystery, reminding us that history is often only partially revealed, shaped as much by what has vanished as by what survives. These early forms also hint at the complexity of human thought. The design of an Atlatl, even in its most basic form, requires a mental leap, understanding that a stick can act as an extension of the arm, that the stored energy of motion can be amplified, that distance can become safety. Such understanding is not instinctual, it is learned, imagined, and refined. Evidence of wear patterns on bone and stone fragments suggests repeated testing, experimentation, and adjustment. Humans were observing outcomes, adjusting their designs, and passing knowledge to others. Even without formal language or written instruction, these early innovators were engaged in a process of trial, error, and incremental improvement that echoes modern engineering principles. The earliest evidence is also marked by regional variation. In Europe, carved bone hooks and grooved implements suggest tools that may have functioned as spear throwers. In Australia, rock art depicts figures holding long, straight objects that resemble early Atlatls, though no wooden artifacts survive. In the Americas, archaeologists have found bone and antler devices that indicate similar principles, hinting at convergent evolution in technological thought. These disparate discoveries suggest that the need to extend reach, strike from a distance, and minimize personal risk was universal among hunter-gatherers. Human ingenuity, guided by necessity, independently produced remarkably similar solutions in environments separated by thousands of miles and centuries of isolation. The lack of names or records for these early tools adds to their enigmatic nature. We assign the term Atlatl retrospectively, but for the humans who first used them, these were not classified objects, they were extensions of the body, pieces of survival, inventions born out of pressing need. They were passed from hand to hand, learned through demonstration, and modified with each generation. The human mind had grasped the principle of leverage long before it could be formally articulated. What we see in fragments is the physical manifestation of that understanding, evidence of cognitive leaps that remain remarkable even to modern eyes. Archaeological uncertainty also sparks philosophical reflection. The fact that we cannot reconstruct these tools completely, that so much of human ingenuity has vanished, reminds us of the fragility of knowledge and the transience of existence. Every artifact that survives is a whisper from the past, a faint echo of thought and intention, a reminder that humans have always straddled the line between creativity and impermanence. The earliest Atlatls were not just functional, they were embodiments of human aspiration, reaching beyond the limitations of muscle and instinct into a realm where imagination guided action. They are evidence that humans have long sought to master the world through intellect as well as effort. The fragmented nature of these early examples also allows us to imagine the lives of the people who used them. Each piece suggests careful hands, measured experiments, repeated testing. Humans were observing, adjusting, and refining in ways that required patience, foresight, and collaboration. They were teachers as well as learners, passing knowledge through demonstration and repetition. Every groove on a piece of bone, every notch carved into wood, every subtle balance point adjusted through trial reflects not only survival instinct but curiosity, creativity, and the quiet persistence of human thought. Despite the gaps in the record, these fragments speak volumes about the relationship between humans and their tools. They show a species learning to extend itself, to reach farther, and to act beyond the immediate constraints of the body. They illustrate the profound human drive to innovate, to imagine solutions where none exist, and to transform the environment in ways that are both subtle and monumental. Each surviving fragment, no matter how small, carries the imprint of a mind wrestling with necessity, exploring possibility, and achieving a new form of power. The Atlatl, even in its earliest, most uncertain forms, represents more than just a tool. It embodies the intersection of thought, observation, and survival. It is a statement that humans were no longer passive participants in the world but active agents shaping it. Though we cannot see the complete picture, we glimpse a moment when human ingenuity reached beyond instinct, when hands and minds worked together to create a mechanism that would extend reach, multiply force, and change the course of hunting and survival. In many ways, these early forms are both enigmatic and inspiring. They remind us that invention does not always leave a clear trace, that progress often occurs in silence and in fragments. Yet within those fragments lies evidence of a profound cognitive leap, a recognition that the body could be extended, that thought could shape action, and that necessity could give rise to creativity. These ancient devices, lost and partially preserved, are the earliest proof that humans had begun to imagine tools that exceeded the limits of flesh and muscle, planting the seeds of a technological revolution that would echo for tens of thousands of years. Even in their incomplete state, these artifacts speak to the continuity of human ingenuity. They demonstrate a capacity for problem-solving, abstraction, and experimentation that defines our species. The missing pieces, the decayed wood, the vanished leather, are as much a part of the story as the surviving fragments. They remind us that history is shaped by both presence and absence, that knowledge is fragile, and that the act of creation is often as ephemeral as it is transformative. Through these early, partially preserved forms, we see a window into the minds of our ancestors, their curiosity, their careful observation, their willingness to experiment, and their drive to master the world around them. They were inventors before invention had a name, thinkers before science existed, and innovators whose work laid the foundation for a technological journey that continues to this day. The earliest Atlatls may be lost to time, but their impact is undeniable, echoing through millennia as a testament to human imagination and determination. The moment a hunter first grasps the Atlatl is unlike any other experience in prehistory. The weight of the carved wood feels familiar, yet different. The hand intuitively finds balance along its length, yet there is a subtle shift in motion that requires learning, adjustment, and practice. The spear rests in the notched end, and for the first time, the hunter feels the potential for distance and power magnified beyond the limitations of the arm. It is a quiet revelation, subtle at first, then profound, the realization that the body is no longer the sole source of force. The tool acts as an extension of the arm, an amplifier of intent, and a bridge between thought and action. Each throw becomes a lesson in coordination, balance, and timing, a dialogue between the hunter and the environment in which the laws of motion become tangible and immediate. Learning to wield the Atlatl is a process of intimacy between human and tool. The hunter must adjust posture, angle, and timing. The weight of the spear changes the feel of the throw, its trajectory depends on subtle shifts in wrist, shoulder, and elbow. Muscle memory develops over weeks, months, and years, yet each hunter learns in a unique way, informed by body structure, experience, and the type of prey they pursue. Practice becomes ritual, repetition becomes meditation, and each successful throw reinforces the connection between mind, hand, and weapon. Over time, mastery emerges not through instruction alone but through sustained interaction with the tool, a deep understanding of its potential and limitations that no manual could convey. The Atlatl also transforms the strategy of hunting. Prey that once required careful stalking, close-range ambushes, or dangerous traps can now be engaged from a safer distance. Herds of bison, elk, or mammoths that would have forced humans into perilous proximity can be disrupted, wounded, or incapacitated before hunters risk exposure. The psychological impact on the hunter is profound. Where fear and hesitation once dominated, there is now a growing sense of control and agency. The balance of power shifts, not through brute strength but through intelligence, precision, and innovation. The hunter begins to understand that survival is not simply a matter of endurance or courage, but of foresight, experimentation, and mastery of new technology. The consequences of this newfound advantage ripple through the group. Hunting becomes more collaborative and strategic. Leaders emerge, those who understand the intricacies of the Atlatl guiding the efforts of the group. Signals, gestures, and subtle coordination allow hunters to manage herds and anticipate movement. The tool changes not only the physical act of hunting but also the social dynamics surrounding it. Knowledge becomes power, expertise is respected, and the successful transmission of skill from one hunter to another ensures the survival of the community. Each generation inherits not just the weapon, but the accumulated wisdom of its use, creating a continuous thread of learning that shapes culture, identity, and survival strategies. The effectiveness of the Atlatl also reshapes human perception of the environment. Where distance once represented danger, it now represents opportunity. Predators can be engaged without immediate risk, prey can be struck with precision from vantage points previously considered too remote. The hunter begins to see the landscape not merely as a place of raw survival, but as a theater of possibilities, a space where strategy, observation, and creativity can be applied. The physical world becomes a canvas, and the Atlatl is the brush, translating intention into action across space and time. Humans begin to perceive patterns, to anticipate movement, and to manipulate circumstances in ways previously unimaginable. The skill required to wield the Atlatl also transforms the hunter's relationship with patience and timing. The tool amplifies force and extends reach, but it does not remove the need for careful observation. Success depends on reading the behavior of animals, interpreting the signals of movement, and choosing the precise moment to strike. Each throw carries consequences, misjudgment can result in wasted effort or injury. The hunter learns to delay gratification, to measure distance, and to synchronize action with both instinct and learned understanding. This cultivation of patience, precision, and foresight marks a cognitive evolution as significant as the tool itself. There is also a psychological effect on prey. Animals that had evolved to respond to immediate threats now face a new form of danger, a weapon that can strike from beyond their usual perception. Herds react to movement, scent, and sound, but the Atlatl introduces unpredictability. Wounded animals behave differently, panic spreads differently, and the hunter can manipulate the environment in subtle ways to exploit these behaviors. Understanding this requires not only observation but imagination, the ability to anticipate reactions, predict movement, and adjust tactics dynamically. The Atlatl thus reshapes the very interaction between humans and the natural world, introducing a dimension of strategy and foresight that had been largely absent. The tool's influence extends beyond hunting into social and cultural realms. Mastery of the Atlatl carries status and respect within the group. Elders and skilled hunters pass down not only the mechanics of use but also the stories of hunts, lessons learned, and innovations discovered. Ceremonial or decorative aspects of the tool may emerge, linking function with identity and culture. The act of crafting and maintaining an Atlatl becomes a form of expression, a tangible connection between human ingenuity and community values. Knowledge is codified through demonstration, imitation, and storytelling, embedding the principles of leverage, force, and timing into collective memory. Physical practice with the Atlatl also enhances sensory awareness. Hunters become more attuned to subtle cues in the environment, the shift of wind across grass, the trembling of the ground beneath approaching hooves, the change in light that signals movement at a distance. These skills, developed in tandem with the tool, sharpen perception, coordination, and reaction time. Humans learn to act not only with precision but with intuition informed by experience and practice. The Atlatl is thus not merely an extension of the arm, it is an extension of perception, a conduit through which observation, thought, and action converge. Over time, the mastery of the Atlatl transforms the hunter's relationship with risk. Where fear once dictated proximity and engagement, skill and experience allow calculated confidence. Hunters can engage dangerous prey with greater safety, reducing unnecessary exposure while maximizing effectiveness. This shift in risk perception influences behavior, planning, and community survival. It fosters a culture of innovation, where knowledge of tools and technique becomes as important as strength and courage. The Atlatl thus shapes both individual capability and collective practice, altering the trajectory of human interaction with the environment. The practice of using the Atlatl also fosters subtle cognitive development. Hunters engage in continuous problem-solving, adapting technique to terrain, prey behavior, and tool characteristics. Each throw is a test, an experiment, and an opportunity to refine understanding. Patterns are recognized, variables controlled, and outcomes predicted. This iterative process cultivates foresight, spatial reasoning, and an understanding of cause and effect. In essence, the tool becomes a medium for cognitive growth, training the mind alongside the body in ways that resonate far beyond hunting. In the larger context of human evolution, the Atlatl represents more than technological advancement, it embodies the convergence of intellect, observation, and creativity. It is the first tool to extend human capability across distance in a deliberate, calculated manner. It transforms survival into strategy, instinct into foresight, and action into deliberate consequence. Each throw, each lesson, each refinement contributes not only to immediate survival but to the gradual accumulation of knowledge that defines humanity's relationship with the environment and with itself. Mastery of the Atlatl also transforms the human experience of time and space. Hunters begin to act not only in the present but with anticipation, projecting trajectories, estimating distances, and planning sequences of movement. Space becomes a medium of possibility rather than a constraint, and time is measured in intervals of opportunity and risk. The tool enables humans to extend their agency across both dimensions, turning the immediate world into a landscape of calculated action and creative problem-solving. Ultimately, the act of learning and mastering the Atlatl is a profound human experience. It is a process of trial, error, and discovery that unites observation, imagination, and skill. It reshapes relationships with prey, environment, and community, introducing new strategies, new social structures, and new dimensions of thought. The tool is not merely an instrument of survival but a catalyst for cognitive, cultural, and technological evolution. Through practice, patience, and experimentation, humans transcend the limits of the body, transforming instinct into deliberate mastery and opening a new chapter in the story of ingenuity, adaptation, and the quiet, relentless pursuit of possibility. The evolution of the Atlatl is inseparable from the changing landscapes and climates that early humans navigated, for survival was never static. As Ice Age glaciers advanced and retreated, forests thickened and thinned, and plains expanded and contracted, humans were forced to adapt not only their movements but the tools they relied upon. The Atlatl, in this context, became more than a weapon, it became a lifeline, a technology whose refinement was dictated by the pressures of the environment. Its form, length, curvature, and balance were not arbitrary, they reflected the species' intimate observation of forces, materials, and prey. The earliest users understood, perhaps intuitively, that success depended not only on human skill but also on the subtle calibration of the tool to meet the demands of each unique ecosystem. In regions of dense forest, where visibility was limited and prey could vanish among thick trunks and underbrush, the Atlatl required a design that emphasized agility and compactness. A shorter shaft allowed for quick, controlled throws in tight spaces, and careful attention to weight ensured that fatigue did not hinder repeated use. Hunters relied on stealth and timing, observing the rhythm of animal movement through shadow and sound rather than sight alone. Here, the Atlatl became a sophisticated instrument of subtlety, allowing humans to extend their reach into spaces otherwise inaccessible and to strike with precision in environments that favored the prey. Its use demanded patience, intuition, and a deep understanding of the environment as an interactive, responsive system. Conversely, on open plains where visibility extended for miles and prey moved in expansive herds, the Atlatl evolved to maximize distance and power. Longer shafts allowed hunters to throw heavier spears farther, striking targets that could run at incredible speeds. Precision became paramount, a misjudged angle could mean the loss of food or the injury of a group member. The open terrain demanded coordination among hunters, who would often plan attacks that relied on understanding the behavior of the herd, the direction of the wind, and even the angle of sunlight to avoid detection. The Atlatl in this context was not merely a tool but a strategic instrument, a mechanism that transformed human cognition and planning into tangible results across space and time. Materials played a critical role in this evolutionary process. Different regions provided varying resources: hardwoods, flexible saplings, antler, bone, and early humans experimented with each. Some woods offered superior elasticity, absorbing energy and transferring it efficiently to the spear. Antler and bone provided rigidity and durability, allowing for repeated throws without deformation. Evidence suggests that humans were selective in their materials, balancing availability, strength, and performance. Even minor adjustments, a curve here, a notch there, could significantly alter the trajectory, speed, and impact of the weapon. This iterative process of experimentation and refinement reveals a sophisticated understanding of mechanics and material properties long before such concepts were formally articulated. The refinement of the Atlatl also coincided with broader shifts in human social and cultural structures. As groups migrated, encountering new terrains and novel prey, the weapon became both a symbol and a repository of collective knowledge. Crafting an effective Atlatl required not only skill but shared learning. Techniques, tips, and successful methods were communicated through demonstration, imitation, and storytelling. Elders and experienced hunters guided novices, passing down the subtle wisdom encoded in form, weight, and motion. In this way, the evolution of the Atlatl was inseparable from the evolution of culture itself, a technology embedded in community, teaching, and memory. The presence of the Atlatl also reshaped human interaction with prey on a conceptual level. Animals were no longer simply targets to approach with caution or brute strength, they became participants in a complex negotiation mediated by observation, strategy, and timing. Hunters learned to read not only movement but intention, anticipating reactions and adjusting throws in response to subtle cues. This deep engagement with the behavior of other species fostered a sophisticated ecological intelligence. Humans began to perceive the natural world not as a backdrop for survival but as a dynamic network of interactions, patterns, and consequences. The Atlatl allowed them to act within this network with an unprecedented combination of distance, control, and foresight. Over time, incremental innovations began to appear. Grooves carved into the handle for grip, counterbalances to improve trajectory, and decorative patterns that may have served as markers for skill or ownership suggest a blending of function, identity, and aesthetics. Even minor innovations in form could yield significant changes in performance, and the iterative process of testing, failure, and refinement accelerated human mastery. Every successful adaptation reinforced the link between observation, imagination, and practical action. The Atlatl became more than a weapon, it became a platform for experimentation, a tangible interface between mind, body, and environment. The impact of this technological evolution extended beyond hunting. Groups armed with effective Atlatls could exploit a wider range of prey, manage resources more effectively, and survive in harsher climates. By enabling humans to hunt from a distance with greater success, the tool increased the efficiency of food procurement and reduced exposure to life-threatening risk. This, in turn, allowed communities to expand their territories, migrate with greater confidence, and exploit ecological niches previously inaccessible. The Atlatl was a vehicle for ecological expansion, allowing humans to inhabit landscapes that would have been deadly with only hand-thrown spears. It also fostered deeper cognitive and social development. Planning a hunt with Atlatls required coordination, timing, and shared understanding of both the landscape and animal behavior. Leaders emerged organically, those who could anticipate the dynamics of the hunt guiding collective action. Communication, both verbal and non-verbal, became crucial. Hunters needed to signal intentions, interpret gestures, and synchronize movements. The tool, in effect, created the conditions for early forms of organized strategy, social cohesion, and knowledge transfer. Its influence was as much cultural as it was technological. The Atlatl's evolution illustrates the intimate relationship between human creativity and environmental challenge. Each change in climate, terrain, or prey behavior demanded a response, and humans met these challenges not merely with brute force but with imagination and experimentation. The weapon became a lens through which humans engaged with the natural world, learning to anticipate patterns, manipulate circumstances, and act with calculated precision. In this sense, the Atlatl was a teacher, shaping both skill and thought, demonstrating that survival was a matter not only of muscle but of cognition and insight. Its influence also extended to identity and social signaling. Skill in using the Atlatl was a marker of competence, a demonstration of knowledge, dexterity, and judgment. Decorative elements may have served as badges of status, indicators of personal or group identity, or symbolic references to spiritual or communal values. In this way, the weapon became intertwined with human self-conception, a tangible expression of intellect, capability, and cultural belonging. It was no longer merely a means to an end but a repository of human ingenuity, creativity, and social learning. Moreover, the Atlatl catalyzed the human capacity for abstract thought. Mastery required understanding not only the mechanics of leverage and force but also the principles of prediction, anticipation, and strategy. Hunters had to conceptualize trajectories, estimate distances, and adapt in real time to unpredictable variables. This process cultivated spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and probabilistic thinking, cognitive skills that extend far beyond the immediate act of hunting. In essence, the Atlatl was both a practical tool and a cognitive accelerator, shaping the human mind alongside survival strategy. The evolutionary trajectory of the Atlatl demonstrates the inseparability of human innovation and environmental pressure. It highlights the iterative process of observation, experimentation, refinement, and knowledge transfer that defines the story of human ingenuity. From forested valleys to open plains, from bone to hardwood, from practical necessity to cultural artifact, the Atlatl evolved in response to the demands of life, reshaping both capability and consciousness. It is a testament to the adaptive power of the human mind, the persistence of creativity, and the capacity of a simple tool to transform survival into strategy, instinct into foresight, and observation into mastery. Through these countless adaptations, the Atlatl emerged not as a static object but as a dynamic instrument, constantly refined and improved by the humans who relied upon it. Its evolution reflects the inseparable interplay between environment, necessity, imagination, and culture. It is a story of humans learning to extend themselves beyond the limitations of their bodies, to think beyond the immediate moment, and to act with intelligence, precision, and foresight. The Atlatl embodies the profound human capacity to transform circumstance into opportunity, danger into strategy, and observation into invention, a hallmark of our species that resonates across the millennia. The mastery of the Atlatl did more than extend human reach, it transformed the very relationship between humans and the natural world. Before its invention, hunters were bound by proximity, constrained to close encounters with creatures whose strength and speed often exceeded their own. Each encounter demanded caution, courage, and precise timing, yet even the most skillful hunter faced the constant risk of injury or death. The introduction of a tool capable of amplifying force and projecting it across distance redefined these encounters, shifting the balance from raw physical confrontation to calculated, strategic engagement. With the Atlatl, humans could observe, anticipate, and act from a place of relative safety, turning once perilous hunts into controlled exercises of skill, timing, and foresight. The psychological impact of this shift was profound. Hunters began to perceive themselves not merely as participants in a struggle for survival but as agents capable of influencing outcomes at a distance. This sense of control over circumstances altered human behavior, encouraging experimentation and innovation. Hunters learned to measure the environment, to predict the behavior of animals, and to adjust their actions with subtle precision. Where fear had once dominated, confidence grew. The Atlatl did not eliminate risk, but it allowed humans to engage with it strategically, fostering a mindset in which intelligence, observation, and planning became as vital as physical strength. This transformation extended to hunting strategies. In open plains or rolling hills, hunters could coordinate attacks on herds, using the extended range of the Atlatl to position themselves advantageously and to manipulate the movement of prey. Hunters learned to anticipate flight patterns, to direct animals toward natural obstacles or ambush points, and to time their throws with the rhythm of the herd. In forested regions, the tool allowed precision in confined spaces, where stalking and patience were critical. The Atlatl became a versatile instrument, adaptable to diverse terrains and prey behaviors, demonstrating the remarkable capacity of humans to tailor technology to ecological challenges. The act of hunting with the Atlatl also fostered a deeper cognitive engagement with the environment. Hunters were compelled to observe subtle changes in wind, light, and animal behavior. The rustle of grass, the shadow of movement, the direction of scent, these cues became integral to the hunter's calculations. Success required both perception and interpretation, the ability to integrate sensory input with past experience and projected outcomes. Each throw became a test of skill, judgment, and insight, reinforcing the link between tool mastery and environmental intelligence. Over time, these skills accumulated, shaping the cognitive landscape of human groups and embedding complex understanding of the world into collective knowledge. Moreover, the Atlatl influenced social structures and communal organization. Successful hunts demanded coordination and communication. Experienced hunters guided novices, passing down not only the mechanics of the throw but also the strategies for reading terrain and anticipating prey behavior. Leadership emerged naturally, based on skill, insight, and experience. The knowledge of how to wield the Atlatl effectively became a form of social currency, conferring status and respect within the group. The tool thus became intertwined with hierarchy, mentorship, and cultural identity, shaping the ways in which humans collaborated, learned, and transmitted knowledge across generations. The technical mastery required for effective use of the Atlatl also had implications for human creativity and problem-solving. Hunters engaged in iterative experimentation, adjusting grip, angle, and force to achieve optimal results. Subtle modifications to the weapon, grooves for grip, counterbalances for stability, or adjustments in length, demonstrated an intuitive understanding of physics and mechanics. Trial and error, observation, and reflection became fundamental to innovation. Each hunter's experience contributed to a growing pool of collective knowledge, creating a culture in which ingenuity was both necessary and valued. The Atlatl was not simply a tool of survival, it was a catalyst for intellectual and technological development. The Atlatl's influence extended beyond immediate survival into the realm of culture and identity. Its creation and use carried symbolic significance, representing skill, intelligence, and mastery over one's environment. Decorative elements or carefully crafted forms could signify status, group affiliation, or even spiritual belief. In some societies, the act of making or using the Atlatl may have been accompanied by ritual or ceremony, embedding the tool within the broader social and symbolic framework of the community. Knowledge of its construction, care, and use became part of the cultural fabric, linking survival with identity, tradition, and shared understanding. This deep integration of tool, cognition, and culture highlights the profound ways in which technology shapes human evolution. The Atlatl is not merely an extension of physical capacity, it is an extension of thought, perception, and social interaction. Mastery of the weapon cultivates patience, precision, and foresight, while simultaneously reinforcing communal bonds and transmitting knowledge across generations. Humans are transformed through their engagement with the Atlatl, developing skills and understandings that extend far beyond the act of hunting itself. The extended reach and increased power provided by the Atlatl also had ecological consequences. Humans could hunt larger prey with greater efficiency, potentially influencing animal populations and patterns of movement. This introduced a dynamic in which human activity began to interact more directly with ecosystems, shaping both animal behavior and human settlement patterns. Groups could exploit resources more effectively, inhabit previously marginal territories, and establish seasonal or permanent habitation in areas previously considered too dangerous or challenging. The Atlatl thus played a role not only in immediate survival but also in the long-term adaptation and expansion of human populations. Skill with the Atlatl required the development of anticipatory thinking, a capacity to project outcomes and plan several steps ahead. Hunters visualized the trajectory of a thrown spear, estimated distances, and considered the responses of prey. They learned to act within a complex web of variables, integrating sensory input, memory, and strategy into a cohesive plan. This mode of cognition, simultaneously reactive and predictive, fostered neural pathways associated with planning, spatial awareness, and problem-solving. In essence, the Atlatl functioned as both a tool of survival and a trainer of the mind, cultivating cognitive abilities that would have implications far beyond hunting. As mastery grew, hunters developed a nuanced understanding of momentum, leverage, and force, applying these principles instinctively with each throw. Adjustments in wrist angle, grip tension, and throwing arc allowed precise control over trajectory and impact. Hunters became attuned to the weight, balance, and flexibility of both weapon and spear, learning to synchronize body and tool into a fluid, integrated motion. The Atlatl thus transformed human movement, teaching coordination and control in a way that fused physical skill with cognitive insight. The psychological dimension of hunting with the Atlatl is equally significant. Confidence gained through skill and practice reduced fear, increased patience, and encouraged calculated risk-taking. The hunter learned to approach challenges with a blend of caution and strategic boldness, understanding the interplay between ability, environment, and prey behavior. This shift in mindset had profound effects on social cohesion, planning, and leadership, creating a culture in which knowledge, foresight, and skill were prized alongside strength and endurance. Ultimately, the Atlatl reshaped human existence in fundamental ways. It extended physical reach, amplified force, and enabled strategic action at a distance, transforming hunting from a purely reactive endeavor into a calculated, collaborative process. It fostered cognitive growth, refined social structures, and integrated observation, imagination, and action into a unified practice. By allowing humans to engage with the natural world from a place of relative safety, it changed not only how people hunted but also how they thought, learned, and related to each other. The Atlatl is more than a weapon, it is a milestone in the evolution of human ingenuity, perception, and culture, representing a profound leap in our ability to shape both our environment and ourselves. Through the combination of practice, observation, and adaptation, humans mastered not only the tool but the complex interactions it enabled. The Atlatl became a medium for the exercise of intellect, creativity, and strategy, shaping the hunter's mind as much as the prey's fate. It stands as one of the earliest and most remarkable examples of human technological innovation, a device that redefined survival, empowered cognition, and laid the groundwork for the extraordinary capacity of humans to extend themselves beyond the limits of the body. The Atlatl, as a technological marvel of prehistoric humanity, represents far more than a simple extension of the arm. It embodies the convergence of observation, experimentation, and innovation in a form that is both practical and profound. Each hunter who wields it experiences a tactile dialogue with forces invisible yet palpable: momentum, leverage, balance, and gravity, all orchestrated in a fluid motion that transforms intent into tangible impact. In mastering the Atlatl, humans were engaging with principles that would later form the foundation of physics, albeit without formalized language or theory. The repeated acts of throwing, adjusting, observing, and correcting created a living laboratory in which the laws of motion were internalized through experience, and cognitive skills were sharpened in parallel with physical ability. Every throw of the Atlatl is an exercise in anticipation and precision. The hunter must gauge distance, wind, and angle while accounting for the weight and balance of both spear and throwing device. The act is deceptively simple to an observer, yet it demands intense concentration and nuanced coordination. Tiny adjustments in wrist, elbow, or shoulder can dramatically alter the trajectory of the spear. Through repeated practice, the hunter develops a kinesthetic intelligence, an embodied understanding of mechanics, force, and timing that allows them to act instinctively while remaining adaptable to changing circumstances. This seamless integration of mind, body, and tool represents one of the earliest examples of humans using technology to expand the boundaries of their natural abilities. The utility of the Atlatl also catalyzed a transformation in social and communal dynamics. Hunting became not only an individual endeavor but a coordinated effort requiring communication, observation, and shared strategy. Groups learned to anticipate herd movements, to position themselves advantageously, and to execute complex plans in unison. Experienced hunters served as instructors and guides, transmitting knowledge through demonstration, imitation, and storytelling. These practices reinforced social cohesion and established frameworks for leadership based on skill and insight rather than mere strength. The Atlatl was thus a conduit through which cultural knowledge, communal learning, and strategic thinking could be transmitted, shaping human society as much as it shaped survival practices. As the Atlatl became more sophisticated, variations emerged tailored to specific environments and hunting challenges. In dense forests, shorter, lighter Atlatls allowed for agility and precise control in tight spaces. On open plains, longer, sturdier designs maximized leverage and power for taking down larger or faster prey. The careful selection of materials, flexible woods, antler, or bone, demonstrated an intimate understanding of physical properties. Hunters experimented with length, curvature, grip, and weight, observing how these factors affected performance. This iterative process of trial, error, and refinement illustrates the remarkably advanced problem-solving capabilities of early humans, whose technological creativity was guided not by abstract theory but by direct engagement with the world around them. The cognitive implications of using the Atlatl are equally significant. Mastery requires a blend of memory, perception, and predictive thinking. Hunters must recall prior experiences with similar prey, integrate environmental cues, and anticipate the movement of the target in real time. The act of throwing transforms observation into action, requiring continuous recalibration based on feedback. Over time, these experiences enhance spatial reasoning, temporal planning, and decision-making under pressure. The Atlatl, in essence, serves as a cognitive extension, a tool that trains the mind as much as it empowers the arm. Its use cultivates foresight, adaptability, and problem-solving, skills that would prove essential for subsequent technological innovations. The psychological dimension of hunting with the Atlatl cannot be overstated. Previously, humans faced immense risk when confronting large or dangerous prey. Each encounter carried the potential for injury or death, instilling caution, fear, and hesitation. The Atlatl shifts this dynamic by allowing humans to strike from a distance, mitigating direct danger and fostering confidence. This empowerment encourages experimentation, innovation, and strategic thinking. Hunters gain not only physical advantage but psychological resilience, the ability to approach challenges with composure, observation, and calculated risk. The Atlatl thus functions as both a practical tool and a psychological instrument, reshaping human interaction with danger and opportunity. Beyond individual skill, the Atlatl influenced ecological interactions. By extending reach and amplifying force, humans could hunt larger animals more efficiently, potentially affecting local populations and ecosystem dynamics. Herd behavior, migration patterns, and predator-prey interactions may have been subtly altered by the presence of humans wielding these new weapons. This represents one of the earliest examples of technology mediating environmental relationships, where human ingenuity begins to influence not only survival but the structure of natural communities. The Atlatl becomes an interface through which humans exert agency over the world, shaping outcomes without brute force alone. The Atlatl also held cultural significance that extended beyond its practical application. Crafting an effective device required knowledge, patience, and skill. Decorative carvings, polished surfaces, and attention to balance may have conveyed status, skill, or group affiliation. The making and maintaining of Atlatls could involve ritualized practices, embedding the tool within the cultural, social, and spiritual life of the community. Knowledge about construction, handling, and strategy was codified in oral traditions, embodied in practice, and transmitted across generations. In this way, the Atlatl functions not only as a weapon but as a vessel of cultural memory and identity, linking technological skill with social and symbolic meaning. The process of mastering the Atlatl promotes the development of advanced cognitive abilities. Hunters learn to integrate multiple streams of information, wind, terrain, prey movement, spear weight, while simultaneously planning timing, force, and angle. This multi-layered decision-making fosters abstract thought, predictive reasoning, and adaptability. It is a form of learning in which cause and effect, probability, and feedback loops are internalized experientially rather than through formal education. The Atlatl is thus a training ground for complex cognition, a tool that cultivates intelligence alongside practical skill. Innovation and variation in design illustrate the ingenuity and creativity inherent in prehistoric communities. Subtle modifications, grooves for grip, adjustments in length or weight, and refinements in curvature, demonstrate an intuitive understanding of mechanics and ergonomics. Each adaptation enhances performance, reflecting an ongoing dialogue between observation, experimentation, and practical necessity. The process is iterative, communal, and cumulative, contributing not only to immediate survival but to the collective intellectual and technological growth of the group. The mastery of the Atlatl also profoundly affects human perception of space and time. Hunters must anticipate the path of the spear, the reactions of prey, and the shifting dynamics of the environment. Distance becomes a calculable variable, and timing becomes central to success. Space is no longer merely a stage for survival, it is a medium for strategy and foresight. Time is measured not only in immediate reactions but in anticipation, planning, and adaptive response. The Atlatl transforms the hunter's experience of both dimensions, extending agency across distance and temporal intervals, and teaching humans to act with precision within complex, dynamic systems. The Atlatl is therefore a tool that integrates body, mind, and environment in a profound way. It teaches coordination, fosters strategic thinking, and reshapes risk perception. It strengthens social cohesion through shared knowledge and collective hunting strategies. It mediates ecological interaction and creates pathways for technological and cognitive innovation. Each throw is simultaneously an act of survival, a lesson in physics, a rehearsal of strategy, and a rehearsal of cultural continuity. Through its use, humans extend their natural capabilities, develop advanced cognitive skills, and cultivate a deep understanding of their environment and themselves. Ultimately, the Atlatl represents a pivotal moment in human evolution, not merely a technological leap, but a cognitive, cultural, and ecological transformation. It bridges instinct and intellect, body and mind, observation and imagination. Its mastery illustrates the human capacity to manipulate the environment, to plan and anticipate, and to act with precision and foresight. The Atlatl is a testament to the ingenuity, adaptability, and creativity that define our species, marking a step toward the complex relationship between humans, technology, and the natural world that continues to evolve even today. The Atlatl, in its simplest form, was a revolutionary tool for early humans, extending their capacity to hunt beyond what was previously imaginable. But the profound impact it had on human development stretches far beyond its practical use in the hunt. As the first real innovation to amplify human physicality and extend the range of capabilities, it marked the birth of a new kind of interaction between humans and the environment. The ability to engage from a distance, to strike with force without needing to close in on prey, shifted the way early humans viewed both their bodies and the world around them. This technological leap was a formative moment in human history, one that set the stage for future innovation and laid the groundwork for our species' mastery over the natural world. Early hunters had to engage with their environment with extreme caution and physical proximity. A spear or a hand-thrown rock was a tool of necessity but often left hunters vulnerable to the dangers of their prey, whose strength and speed often outmatched human endurance. The introduction of the Atlatl transformed this dynamic, creating a new kind of relationship between humans and animals. By allowing the hunter to launch a spear from a greater distance, the Atlatl created space, not just physically but psychologically. It provided safety and distance, reducing the risk inherent in hunting large, dangerous prey, and opened up a new realm of strategy, foresight, and collaboration. The shift from direct confrontation to tactical engagement was not just a practical development but a profound cultural change, one that altered the trajectory of human survival. One of the most striking aspects of the Atlatl is how it reframed the concept of risk. Traditionally, survival in early human societies was shaped by constant exposure to immediate danger. Whether from predators, natural elements, or the challenges of hunting itself, humans lived with a daily awareness of their vulnerability. The Atlatl, however, allowed hunters to control the distance between themselves and the threat, shifting the balance from vulnerability to a position of strategic advantage. This subtle shift allowed for more calculated decision-making, enabling humans to act with foresight rather than reacting impulsively to immediate danger. The psychological effects of this newfound agency were profound. Where once there was a constant sense of immediacy, there was now space for reflection, planning, and control. The success of the Atlatl was not solely a result of its mechanical advantage, it was also due to the profound change it initiated in the way early humans thought about and engaged with their environment. To wield the Atlatl effectively, one had to understand not just the tool itself but the natural world on a deeper level. The hunter had to become attuned to the rhythms of nature, the movement of herds, the subtle shifts in wind and weather, and the ways in which animals reacted to their surroundings. The Atlatl was a tool that demanded not only physical mastery but also cognitive awareness, sharpening the hunter's ability to anticipate, predict, and respond. This heightened awareness extended beyond the immediate environment and into the realm of social organization. Hunting was no longer solely an individual activity, it became a coordinated group effort. A successful hunt required communication and collaboration, an understanding of timing, and an ability to work in harmony. The Atlatl, with its capacity for long-range precision, allowed for the orchestration of complex strategies, where different members of the group could position themselves strategically and take advantage of the herd's movements. It also encouraged a division of labor, with experienced hunters teaching the younger generation the finer points of technique, trajectory, and timing. Knowledge of the Atlatl's design and use became a marker of expertise, and those who could master the tool became leaders and mentors within their communities. This shift toward communal hunting strategies forged deeper social bonds and led to the development of leadership roles, further strengthening group cohesion and cooperation. The versatility of the Atlatl across different environments also demonstrated the flexibility of human innovation. In dense forests, where prey was harder to track and visibility was limited, a smaller, more compact version of the Atlatl would have been advantageous. It allowed for more precise and controlled throws, enabling hunters to use the terrain to their advantage and engage prey at close range without exposing themselves to immediate danger. In contrast, on open plains, where large herds could be seen from miles away, longer Atlatls designed for greater force and distance became the tool of choice. The varied designs of the Atlatl demonstrate the adaptability of early humans, their ability to customize their technology to meet the challenges of different environments. This constant refinement, driven by the pressures of survival, marked a key moment in the development of human ingenuity. The physical changes that occurred as a result of the Atlatl's use cannot be overlooked. The tool's design allowed for a more efficient transfer of force, enabling the hunter to throw a spear with greater speed and precision. This increase in efficiency meant that fewer resources were expended, and hunting could be done with less energy, which in turn allowed groups to hunt more often and with greater success. The efficiency gained by using the Atlatl also meant that humans could hunt larger prey, such as bison or mammoth, that would have been far too dangerous to confront directly. These larger animals required more effort to subdue, but the increased range and force provided by the Atlatl made it possible to engage them from a safer distance, ensuring that the hunter's efforts were not wasted. But beyond the physical utility, the Atlatl became a tool of intellectual transformation. As hunters perfected their use of the device, they learned to apply principles of physics and mechanics, albeit without the formal language of science. The ability to calculate distance, trajectory, and force was a cognitive skill that emerged through practice and observation. Each successful hunt reinforced the idea that the natural world could be understood, predicted, and manipulated. The cognitive abilities developed through this process were not limited to hunting. They laid the groundwork for the eventual development of more advanced technologies. The skills of observation, calculation, and planning learned through hunting with the Atlatl would influence human cognition across all areas of life, from architecture to agriculture, from trade to warfare. The Atlatl's cultural significance cannot be understated. It was more than just a tool for hunting, it became a symbol of intelligence, strategy, and mastery. As communities refined their use of the Atlatl, they also began to attribute greater significance to the skills and knowledge required to use it effectively. The ability to craft and wield an Atlatl became a marker of status within the group. Those who excelled were respected, and their knowledge became part of the cultural fabric of the community. The tool was also deeply embedded in the spiritual and ceremonial life of early humans. The making and using of the Atlatl was often accompanied by rituals and stories, further cementing its place in the cultural consciousness. It symbolized not only survival but also the human ability to shape the world around them, to transform nature's raw forces into tools for purpose and power. The Atlatl also played a key role in shaping the environmental relationship between humans and the animals they hunted. It created a new kind of interaction, one that was less about direct confrontation and more about strategic manipulation of the environment. The weapon enabled humans to influence animal behavior, to herd, trap, and direct prey in ways that were previously impossible. This newfound ability to control aspects of the hunt had profound ecological implications. By exploiting the Atlatl's precision and range, humans could selectively target certain animals and control herd dynamics, leading to more efficient hunting practices and more sustainable resource management. Over time, this careful manipulation of the environment may have influenced the migration patterns and populations of animals, demonstrating the early human capacity for ecological management. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Atlatl's development is how it reflects the underlying cognitive and social evolution of early humans. It was a tool that required foresight, planning, and collaboration, skills that are fundamental to more complex forms of human society. The successful use of the Atlatl depended not just on individual strength or skill, but on the collective intelligence of the group. It also required an understanding of the environment, an awareness of the interdependence between species, and an ability to adapt tools to meet ever-changing conditions. This intellectual shift was a precursor to the larger cognitive revolution that would enable humans to build civilizations, invent written language, and develop complex societies. Through the Atlatl, humans not only learned to hunt more effectively, they learned to think in new ways. They began to see the world not just as a collection of challenges to be overcome through brute force but as a system of patterns and forces that could be understood and manipulated. The Atlatl was a tool that made possible a new way of interacting with the world, one in which humans used intelligence and innovation to extend their abilities and reshape their environment. It was not simply a step forward in hunting technology, it was a leap forward in human cognitive and cultural evolution. This transformation in human thinking, driven by the invention of the Atlatl, eventually led to more complex tools, larger social structures, and a deeper understanding of the world. It helped create the foundation for future technological advancements, from the bow and arrow to the development of agriculture, from the construction of cities to the exploration of distant lands. The Atlatl, a seemingly simple device, was, in fact, one of the earliest and most profound steps in the evolution of human creativity, intellect, and cultural identity. Through its design, use, and cultural significance, the Atlatl became not just a tool for survival, but a cornerstone in the development of human civilization. It allowed early humans to extend their reach, amplify their force, and engage with the natural world in new ways. It was a tool that transformed the hunter's relationship with the environment, reshaped social structures, and stimulated cognitive and cultural evolution. In this way, the Atlatl was not just a weapon but a symbol of human potential, a testament to the creativity, intelligence, and adaptability that would define our species for millennia to come. The Atlatl, as a device, was much more than a simple tool. It was a revelation of the human capacity to think beyond immediate needs and push the boundaries of survival strategies. At its core, the Atlatl represented the first true leap from brute physicality to intellectual problem-solving, blending the natural forces of leverage, physics, and motion with the creative mind. Early humans had lived for millennia, using simple, direct means to secure food, but the introduction of the Atlatl, a tool that amplified strength and precision, marked the moment when humans began to shape the environment more intentionally. This shift was not just a technological advancement but a cognitive transformation, one that profoundly changed the way humans interacted with the world and the animals that inhabited it. Before the advent of the Atlatl, hunting required direct confrontation with prey. A spear or hand-thrown weapon was reliant upon the physical abilities of the hunter, and while this may have required skill, it was still constrained by the limits of human strength and endurance. This limitation made humans more vulnerable to the animals they hunted, especially larger, more dangerous species like bison or mammoth. The Atlatl, however, broke down this physical barrier by providing the hunter with a tool that transferred the hunter's force onto the spear, allowing it to be thrown with much greater velocity and accuracy. It transformed the hunter from a mere participant in the struggle for survival to an agent of control, capable of striking from a safe distance and engaging in a more strategic manner. What's most remarkable about the Atlatl is not just the power it gave its user, but the way it altered the hunter's relationship with the world. It is said that humans are one of the few species capable of truly shaping the environment around them, and the Atlatl was one of the earliest manifestations of that potential. The hunter's mind no longer had to focus only on immediate danger but could now shift toward planning and calculating outcomes. The Atlatl allowed for a new kind of engagement with the landscape. A hunter no longer needed to rush in and confront prey at close quarters, where the risk of injury was high. Instead, they could observe, anticipate, and calculate. The Atlatl empowered humans to manipulate space and time, to predict the movements of animals, and to strike with an increased range, reducing risk and increasing the chances of success. As the tool evolved, so too did the strategies associated with its use. In the past, hunting was a solitary pursuit, one in which an individual relied primarily on their own instincts and physical capabilities. But with the introduction of the Atlatl, the dynamic shifted. Hunting became a communal effort, one that required coordination, collaboration, and communication. A single hunter could no longer rely only on their strength and skill. They had to understand the actions of others within the group and work together to achieve a common goal. Atlatls encouraged group hunts in which hunters would position themselves strategically, working together to herd, trap, or ambush prey. These coordinated efforts required careful planning, timing, and synchronization. Leaders emerged, not necessarily based on physical dominance but on knowledge and the ability to strategize. The role of a skilled Atlatl user went beyond just being a proficient hunter. It extended to being a teacher, a guide, and a planner. This new communal approach also changed the way knowledge was passed down through generations. The Atlatl was a tool that demanded more than just physical learning. It required cognitive engagement, observation, and innovation. Elders and experienced hunters had to teach the younger generation not just how to throw the weapon, but how to read the environment, how to understand animal behavior, and how to predict outcomes. The knowledge of Atlatl use became a shared resource, passed down through practice and instruction, becoming an integral part of the culture. This exchange of knowledge formed the foundation for early human education, one in which the focus was on survival, strategy, and community cooperation. The construction of the Atlatl also speaks volumes about the early human capacity for design and experimentation. The materials used, wood, bone, antler, and sometimes stone, required careful selection and shaping. Each material had different properties, such as flexibility, density, or durability, and understanding how these materials interacted with the human body and the environment was essential for crafting an effective tool. A well-crafted Atlatl could launch a spear with a higher velocity and greater accuracy, while a poorly designed one might make the hunter's efforts more difficult and less effective. The process of trial and error that went into perfecting the design of the Atlatl speaks to the problem-solving capabilities of early humans, who were able to experiment and refine their tools to meet specific needs. This iterative process not only made the Atlatl more efficient but also spurred further innovations in hunting and technology. The increased range and power provided by the Atlatl also had a profound impact on the animals being hunted. As humans became more proficient with the tool, they were able to take down larger and more powerful prey. This marked a shift in how humans interacted with other species. No longer were humans at the mercy of the prey they hunted. With the Atlatl, they could control the engagement. A hunter could now strike a mammoth from a distance, keeping themselves far from its dangerous tusks and enormous strength. This shift in hunting dynamics had profound ecological implications, as it allowed humans to target specific species more effectively, influence animal behaviors, and alter the balance of ecosystems. The psychological effects of this shift in hunting strategies are also significant. Prior to the Atlatl, hunting was a dangerous and often brutal activity. The risk of injury or death was ever present, and many early human societies may have been shaped by the trauma of failed hunts and lost members. The Atlatl allowed for a degree of safety that simply wasn't possible before. The ability to hunt from a distance not only reduced the risks but also created a sense of control over the environment. As a result, hunters could approach the task with greater calm and patience. This newfound psychological resilience had far-reaching effects, influencing not just hunting but other areas of human life, such as cooperation, conflict resolution, and even problem-solving in the face of other challenges. But the Atlatl's significance was not limited to its practical uses. It had deeper cultural and symbolic meanings, reflecting the growth of human identity and social organization. The design of the Atlatl itself was not just functional, it was also a statement of craftsmanship and creativity. The marks and carvings on the handle of an Atlatl might have signified personal or group identity, or perhaps spiritual or ceremonial significance. The weapon was a tool of power, but it was also a means of communication, a way for early humans to express themselves in relation to the world around them. Whether decorated with intricate patterns or simple symbols, the Atlatl was not just a utilitarian object, it was a cultural artifact, a piece of art that connected the user to a broader social and spiritual context. As the Atlatl became more central to the lives of early humans, its influence extended beyond the hunt. It shaped how humans viewed themselves and their place in the world. The Atlatl allowed them to exert control over their environment, to engage with it on a deeper level, and to manipulate nature in ways that no other species could. This shift in power dynamics, the ability to hunt from a distance, to strike with greater force, and to coordinate with others, redefined what it meant to be human. It was not just about survival anymore, it was about mastery, strategy, and the ability to shape the world according to human will. Furthermore, the cognitive changes that accompanied the use of the Atlatl did not remain confined to hunting. As early humans honed their skills with the Atlatl, they developed the ability to plan ahead, to anticipate outcomes, and to make calculated decisions. This kind of thinking extended beyond the realm of hunting and into other areas of life. It influenced how humans approached other survival challenges, such as gathering food, creating shelter, or even forming social structures. The cognitive evolution sparked by the use of the Atlatl set the stage for further advancements in technology, art, and culture, eventually leading to the development of civilization itself. The Atlatl's impact on human evolution is still evident today. Though the Atlatl has long been replaced by more advanced technologies, the fundamental ideas it represents, strategic thinking, innovation, and the ability to shape the environment, continue to drive human progress. The mastery of the Atlatl was a milestone in human history, marking a moment when humans first truly harnessed the power of technology to extend their physical abilities, to manipulate nature, and to organize socially and cognitively in ways that would eventually lead to the rise of complex societies. In this sense, the Atlatl was not just a tool, it was a catalyst for the development of human intelligence, culture, and civilization. The Atlatl, a seemingly simple device, serves as a profound testament to the adaptability and ingenuity of early humans. At its core, it was not just an enhancement of physical strength but a technological revolution that altered the trajectory of human evolution. Its impact extends far beyond the immediate context of hunting. The Atlatl represents a shift in the way early humans interacted with their environment, developed social structures, and engaged in collective cognitive efforts. Through its design and use, the Atlatl allowed humans to harness natural forces in a way that was previously unimaginable, bridging the gap between immediate survival and a more strategic, long-term approach to life and society. Before the advent of the Atlatl, human hunting strategies were limited by physical capacity. Early humans, like many other species, had to rely on close-range tools such as spears, rocks, and clubs, which required the hunter to be within the immediate vicinity of the prey. This brought a high level of danger, particularly when hunting large and dangerous animals. With the introduction of the Atlatl, however, humans gained the ability to strike from a distance, with the tool amplifying the power of the throw and enabling greater precision. This shift allowed humans to engage in the hunt with far greater control, reducing the risk of injury or death and opening up new possibilities for survival. The transition from close-range hunting to long-range tactics was not merely a matter of physical distance, it marked a shift in human perception of power and control. Prior to the Atlatl, hunting was an intimate, personal endeavor, defined by the hunter's direct interaction with the prey. The Atlatl created a buffer zone, a space between the hunter and the prey, which allowed the hunter to act from a position of greater safety. The tool also provided the hunter with the ability to influence the outcome of the hunt through strategic planning and calculation. Instead of relying on immediate, instinctual action, the Atlatl demanded foresight, patience, and an understanding of the natural world. The use of the Atlatl required the hunter to observe the behavior of the prey, anticipate its movements, and adjust accordingly. This added layer of complexity and thoughtfulness transformed hunting from a reactive activity into a proactive, tactical endeavor. The psychological impact of the Atlatl cannot be understated. In its earliest forms, humans lived in a world filled with danger, where close encounters with large prey could result in injury or death. The advent of the Atlatl allowed early humans to reduce this risk significantly, providing them with a tool that allowed for greater control over the situation. With this newfound control came confidence. Humans could now approach the hunt with more deliberation, less fear, and a greater sense of agency. The Atlatl shifted the balance of power, enabling humans to engage with their environment on their own terms. This confidence would have been psychologically empowering, allowing individuals to approach life's challenges with a more analytical mindset rather than simply reacting to immediate threats. This new sense of control also had social implications. While early human societies were likely hierarchical to some extent, the Atlatl introduced a new form of leadership, one based not solely on physical strength but on skill, strategy, and knowledge. A hunter who mastered the Atlatl became a valuable member of the group, not only for their hunting prowess but for their ability to teach others and contribute to the strategic planning of hunts. The Atlatl fostered collaboration, communication, and a division of labor within early human groups, all of which were essential for the success of the hunt. Knowledge of the Atlatl and its use became a form of social currency, with expertise in its use conferring respect and leadership within the group. In this way, the Atlatl contributed to the development of early social structures and cemented the idea that intellect and skill were as important as physical strength in ensuring the success of the group. The cultural significance of the Atlatl extended beyond its practical use. As humans became more adept at using the tool, its design evolved, and variations emerged depending on the environment and the type of prey being hunted. In regions with dense forests, for example, Atlatls were made shorter for greater maneuverability, while in open plains, longer versions were crafted for more power and distance. The design of the Atlatl reflected the human capacity to innovate based on environmental needs. Beyond its utilitarian function, the Atlatl also became a symbol of technological mastery and cultural identity. Early humans began to craft Atlatls not just for function, but with aesthetic considerations in mind, incorporating decorations and markings that could represent tribal affiliations, personal identity, or spiritual beliefs. These elements of decoration, whether carved into the wood or etched into the surface, reflected the growing sense of personal and cultural expression. In addition to its material significance, the Atlatl became embedded in early human rituals and ceremonies. The process of making and using the Atlatl was likely accompanied by ceremonial practices, marking the importance of the tool within the broader social and spiritual context. Rituals surrounding hunting and the tools used in hunting were often tied to the belief systems of early human societies, and the Atlatl may have held symbolic meaning in this regard. It could have been seen as a sacred object, representing the relationship between humans, the natural world, and the spiritual realm. The making of the Atlatl itself could have been a ceremonial act, with hunters and artisans dedicating time and energy to crafting the tool with respect and reverence. In this way, the Atlatl was not just a weapon, it was a cultural artifact that connected the practical and the spiritual aspects of early human life. From a cognitive standpoint, the use of the Atlatl prompted the development of advanced problem-solving skills. Unlike simpler tools, which might require only basic understanding, the Atlatl demanded a more intricate awareness of mechanics and force. To effectively use the Atlatl, a hunter had to be attuned to the dynamics of motion, the angle of the throw, the trajectory of the spear, the speed of the wind, and the behavior of the prey. These variables required careful calculation and adaptation, and success depended on the hunter's ability to integrate sensory input with prior knowledge. As such, the Atlatl served as both a tool for hunting and a cognitive training device, fostering a type of intelligence that combined memory, observation, and prediction. The skills developed through the use of the Atlatl, spatial awareness, attention to detail, and an understanding of the natural world, laid the foundation for further advancements in human cognition and technology. The relationship between the Atlatl and the environment was another crucial aspect of its impact. By enabling humans to hunt from a distance, the Atlatl allowed for more efficient and selective hunting. Large animals that would have been difficult or dangerous to approach directly could now be targeted from a safe distance, reducing the risk to the hunter. This increased safety likely allowed early human groups to hunt more regularly, increasing their access to food and other resources. As hunting strategies evolved, so too did the relationship between humans and the animals they hunted. The Atlatl provided a means of not only hunting more effectively but also of influencing animal populations in ways that may have contributed to the development of early human ecology. This shift in hunting dynamics also had lasting implications for human survival and expansion. As humans became more proficient with the Atlatl, they were able to exploit a wider range of environments, from open plains to dense forests, and to target a greater variety of animals. The increased efficiency in hunting allowed for population growth, the expansion of territory, and the establishment of permanent settlements. In essence, the Atlatl contributed to the creation of surplus food, which in turn facilitated the development of more complex social structures, trade networks, and eventually, the rise of agriculture. The Atlatl was not just a tool for survival in the short term, it played a pivotal role in shaping the trajectory of human development over millennia. The technological leap represented by the Atlatl also paved the way for subsequent innovations. Its introduction to early humans marked the beginning of a series of advancements in weaponry and tools. As humans learned to manipulate the forces of nature, they began to create new devices that would further extend their capabilities. The Atlatl itself would eventually give way to other tools, such as the bow and arrow, which built on the same principles of leveraging force for greater range and precision. In this way, the Atlatl was not just a one-time invention but a precursor to a long line of technological developments that would continue to shape the course of human history. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Atlatl lies in the way it fundamentally altered the way humans engage with the world. It was a tool that required both physical and cognitive skill, a device that integrated observation, creativity, and practicality. By providing a means of engaging with nature from a distance, the Atlatl created a new paradigm of human interaction, one defined by strategy, foresight, and a deeper understanding of the environment. The Atlatl was not just a tool for survival, it was a symbol of human potential, of the ability to overcome physical limitations through ingenuity and intelligence. Its influence can still be felt today, as we continue to develop technologies that amplify our abilities and shape the world around us. The Atlatl was not just a tool, it was an embodiment of humanity's desire to transcend the limitations of their physical existence. By amplifying their natural capabilities, it allowed early humans to bridge the gap between their vulnerability and the world of powerful, often dangerous animals they sought to hunt. As a weapon that increased the range and impact of a spear, the Atlatl opened up new possibilities for human survival. Its influence was not confined to the act of hunting alone, it reshaped the way humans thought about strength, strategy, and their place within the natural world. It also set the stage for a fundamental shift in how humans organized themselves socially, how they transmitted knowledge, and how they innovated for the future. The Atlatl allowed early humans to overcome one of their most fundamental challenges: survival in the face of larger, more powerful animals. For thousands of years, humans had been reliant on close-range tools to hunt, which meant getting dangerously close to their prey. A hand-thrown spear, while effective in some situations, lacked the range and force needed to take down larger game, and it placed the hunter in close proximity to the risk of injury. The Atlatl, by contrast, amplified the force of the spear throw and increased its range, allowing humans to hunt from a safe distance. This not only minimized the immediate risks but also provided the hunter with more options and opportunities to engage in strategic planning. While the practical benefits of the Atlatl were evident, its true impact reached far beyond the immediate context of hunting. As the tool became more integral to survival, it spurred advancements in human thought and culture. The Atlatl's design required an understanding of mechanics, trajectory, and force. A successful throw required precision, foresight, and a deep knowledge of how materials interacted. It was not merely a physical tool but one that demanded cognitive engagement. To wield the Atlatl effectively, the user had to master the mechanics of the weapon and understand how to apply its force, making it an exercise in both physical and intellectual skill. This intellectual leap was monumental. Humans were no longer just responding to their immediate environment, but were shaping it actively, using tools that allowed them to engage with nature in new and more complex ways. The cognitive demands of using the Atlatl transformed the way humans perceived the world around them. No longer were they simply reacting to their environment with instinctive actions. Instead, the Atlatl required them to think in terms of cause and effect, to anticipate outcomes, and to calculate how different variables, such as the wind, the terrain, or the behavior of the prey, would affect the hunt. The very act of using the Atlatl required a higher level of awareness and control, shifting the focus of human interaction with the environment from mere survival to a more strategic approach. The tool thus served as both a practical instrument and a cognitive training device that enhanced the mental faculties necessary for survival. This new way of thinking also had profound implications for the social organization of early human communities. Hunting, once an individualistic pursuit, gradually became a more collaborative activity. The precision and range afforded by the Atlatl meant that different individuals could take on specialized roles within the hunt. Some could track the animals, others could position themselves at strategic locations, and still others could provide cover or help in the final stages of the hunt. The success of the hunt was no longer solely reliant on one individual's strength and skill but required coordination and collaboration. The use of the Atlatl encouraged the development of social bonds and cooperative behaviors. In this way, the tool also laid the groundwork for the complex social structures that would later emerge as human societies grew more intricate. As humans became more adept at using the Atlatl, they also became more attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. To use the tool effectively, hunters needed to understand the behavior of animals, their movements, feeding habits, and migration patterns. This level of insight into the natural world required not only keen observation but also a deep understanding of how different species interacted with their environment. The Atlatl demanded that humans observe the world from a distance, learning how to predict and interpret the actions of the prey. In this way, the Atlatl became a bridge between humans and the natural world, facilitating a more intimate understanding of nature and the cycles that governed it. The increased efficiency that came with the Atlatl allowed early humans to adapt more easily to different environments. In regions where large prey was abundant, the Atlatl allowed hunters to take down more animals with greater ease. In more rugged or densely vegetated environments, the tool could be adapted to suit the landscape, with shorter versions designed for better maneuverability in confined spaces. The Atlatl's versatility allowed humans to exploit a variety of ecosystems, from open plains to forests, expanding the range of animals they could hunt. This flexibility not only ensured survival but also provided the foundation for further exploration and adaptation as early humans began to migrate across different landscapes. One of the most important consequences of the Atlatl was its ability to influence human settlement patterns. With the increased success of hunting, early humans were able to secure a more reliable food source. This allowed them to establish more permanent settlements, creating the conditions for the development of more complex societies. As humans began to settle in one place for longer periods, they began to accumulate surplus food, which in turn allowed for specialization in other areas. Some individuals might become skilled toolmakers, while others might focus on crafting weapons or developing strategies for hunting. This surplus also fostered trade between different groups, leading to the exchange of goods, ideas, and knowledge. In this way, the Atlatl played a pivotal role in the transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer societies to more settled agricultural ones. In addition to its practical and cognitive benefits, the Atlatl also had significant cultural and symbolic value. Early humans did not simply see the Atlatl as a tool for hunting. It was a powerful symbol of mastery over the environment. To create and wield such a tool required not only physical strength but also creativity, innovation, and foresight. The Atlatl was an expression of human ingenuity, a representation of humanity's capacity to manipulate the world around them to ensure survival. Over time, the Atlatl became an important part of the social fabric, passed down through generations as both a practical tool and a cultural artifact. The creation of the Atlatl also involved a level of craftsmanship that reflected early human artistic sensibilities. The materials used in crafting the tool, wood, bone, antler, and stone, required careful selection and manipulation. The process of making the Atlatl was likely a communal activity, with specialized knowledge passed down through generations. The designs of atlatls varied greatly, with different cultures and groups creating their own distinct versions based on local resources and hunting needs. Some atlatls were simple, utilitarian designs, while others were ornately carved, reflecting personal or cultural significance. These decorative elements suggest that the atlatl was more than just a tool, it was an object of cultural identity, representing the values and beliefs of the people who used it. The significance of the atlatl was not just material but also spiritual. In many early human cultures, hunting was closely tied to spiritual beliefs and rituals. The act of hunting was often seen as a sacred activity, and the tools used in hunting, including the atlatl, were often imbued with symbolic meaning. The making and use of the atlatl could have been accompanied by rituals that honored the animals being hunted or sought to invoke spiritual protection. The atlatl, as a tool that bridged the physical and spiritual worlds, became a central object in these rituals. It represented not just survival, but the balance between humans and the natural world. Over time, as human societies grew more complex and new technologies were developed, the atlatl began to fall out of use. More advanced weapons, such as the bow and arrow, offered even greater precision and range, leading to the eventual obsolescence of the atlatl. However, its legacy lived on. The principles that the atlatl embodied, strategic thinking, the mastery of natural forces, and the ability to manipulate the environment, remained central to the human experience. The atlatl served as a catalyst for the development of more advanced technologies and the expansion of human capabilities. Looking back at the atlatl, it is clear that its significance extends far beyond its role as a hunting tool. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, a tool that allowed early humans to take control of their environment and, in doing so, laid the foundation for the development of more complex technologies, social structures, and cultural identities. The atlatl was a pivotal moment in human history, representing a shift from raw physical strength to intellectual innovation, from mere survival to a more strategic and deliberate engagement with the world. Its impact resonates through the ages, influencing the course of human evolution and development in ways that continue to shape our lives today.